Well, at school we had a theatre company that we did for a couple of years, and right up until we left school, and we played a lot of fringe venues in London. And one night in the pub, probably after a few beers, I think we declared a few Coca-Colas for him. I think we declared, I'd certainly remember declaring that I was really bored in the theatre. I was fed up with being a lovey. And Hasan said he had some cameras, or at least he had one, and I think he had use of another one, these Super 8 cameras.
Yeah, the second camera was borrowed and then it got given to me, so we had 2 cameras.
So he had the cameras, and so he thought of making a film because he always wanted to make a film. I thought of doing it about music, and there were about 10 of us, a core of about 10 of us at the time, and we were all young, covered in spittle.
That's your favourite.
That's my favourite phrase. That's what we were. We were young and covered in sputum. We thought it would take us about
6 months.
6 months. Yeah. It took us how long?
3.5, 4 years by the time we actually completed the entire production.
So not exactly the lightning quick production process we'd envisaged, but there you go. It was basically financed by 10 teenagers and their wage packets. This was when we would film anyone we could get access to, which wasn't very many people, because I used to spend most of my time on the phone or at gigs chasing people, roadies and things afterwards, trying to get through the door and trying to get people to agree to be filmed by us, which wasn't easy given the fact that we were all, the youngest of us was like 14, the oldest was probably about 17 or 18. We all had strange hair and even funnier trousers, and we really didn't look like a professional film crew. And so whenever people looked at us slightly askance and said, well, what are you doing? They said, well, we're making a film. And they'd go, BBC or ITV, and we'd go, neither really. So it was all about whoever had the sort of generosity and who had the sort of, who didn't really care who we were or what we were like, and the fact that we were all, completely didn't know one end of a camera from the other, and were just, wanting to get through their door. So that was really about the only people we were able to do. And we financed it simply. Super 8 cassettes were about that size, and they were about 3.5 minutes long, 3 minutes, 20 seconds. They were like the length of a pop song.
And that was running at 18 frames a second. That's for those technical people who are actually watching.
Except our cameras didn't run at 18 frames per second.
Ours ran 18 and a bit.
Because
at the time,
when
we didn't realise then.
When you're filming in sweaty clubs, what you don't realise is that the cameras that are supposed to run at 18 frames per second or 24 frames per second actually run at about 19 3/4 and 23 3/6.
Because we did not have what they called at the time crystal sync locks in the camera. So of course
I never knew what that meant, and I still don't know what that meant.
The heat in any place will make the camera go either a little bit faster or possibly a tiny bit slower. So you're not actually getting 18 frames a second.
So none of what we did was, in sync for very long. The time that we were filming between 1978 and 1981 was the post-punk period, you would call it. If you were looking at a timeline of these kinds of homemade movies, you could look at Don Lett's movies that he filmed at the Roxy at the early days of punk, 100 Days at the Roxy and the punk rock movie. And we sort of came immediately after that period because his went up to around 1977, 78. We started in 78 and went up to 81 at a time when people were looking around for what was going to come after punk, and there was a period when almost every month seemed to have a different sort of music movement. You had the two-tone, the ska movement, you had a mod revival, you had sort of the beginning of the oi bands, you had the sort of second and third generation punk bands. It was a very turbulent time for music with cults and different musical movements, the beginning of factory records, starting up all over the place. So it was a perfect time to be filming something that was very vibrant and alive and eclectic, and we would literally film anyone we could get access to.
Really only much later on, first on a kind of quite accidental basis, that we got some of the so-called grant or official money, which was GLAR. And the way that happened was, at our secondary school, one of the heads of department knew a producer. She was talking to him one day, and he happened to be at the school one day to meet her, and basically we chatted. We then showed him some of the rushes, and it was then their suggestions to go to a particular person, first at GLAR, and then much
Greater
later
London
on
Arts Association
at the time, and then to the BFI. So the Greater London Arts Association, that's the first lot who actually gave us, I think at the time, was it about £1,500?
I think it was about £2,000, which was an absolute king's ransom. And, you know, we'd already been busy pioneering major, you know, filmmaking techniques such as, you know, wobbly cam,
That's right.
soft French focusing,
Yeah.
and...
or is the camera on?
Yeah, is the camera lens cap filming, which was always very popular. We did a lot of that, sort of filming with a lens cap on, which was some of the best stuff we did, and also anti-continuity. You know, just basically we looked at the rules of filmmaking and decided they weren't for us.
However, when we did get the Nagras to record with, once we had the money from the Greater London Arts Association, the actual Nagras were in sync, but of course the Super 8 cameras we were still using had no sync still. We were actually recording onto the magnetic stripe. So we thought, well, no problem, we'll still record onto that, then we'll take the sound off the Nagra tape and match it up. Simple.
Not simple.
Not so simple. Later on is when we actually realised you need both camera and Nagra in sync.
If it hadn't been for Alan and his brilliant editing and his brilliant methods of covering up our ineptitude, then the film would never have come out. He had to... It was in the days when you cut films with sellotape and razor blades, and he had to literally calculate how many frames we'd got before the sound started to drift out of sync, and then cut it away to some other shot. So you've got shots in the film where the whole songs, and they appear to be perfectly in sync. Believe me, they weren't, because by the time Alan had finished, you know, cutting out 1.5 frames, 2 frames, 30 frames, 32, to bring it all up to speed, that he'd managed to make it look as if we'd been, you know, brilliantly skilled filmmakers from the start, which we never were. We learnt everything we know about doing films from that. We had one light, which we used for interviews, which was about 2,000 watts and made everybody look like disturbed
I
hamsters.
must say, it was quite a high-tech light at the time, because
at the time
you
it was
could
like
turn it onto 500 watts
searchlight.
or 1,000 or 2,000. But we'd go into some of these places, the rehearsal studios, massive space, so we'd put on a 2,000 watt light, and hence. But then when we'd go and, for example, interview someone like, at the time I remember when we did John Peel. However, the light from the right hand side that we had, it was a small office. We only knew later on that it was, you know, it was really washed out, but that's all being resolved right
But
now.
he already looks like a small marmoset, you know, and then to blast him with 2,000 watts of light, he looks like, you know, he's blinking in this sort of mad sun, and it made everyone look like bewildered hamsters, that light, and that was our only technology. Having made a Super 8 film that then needed to be put on general release in cinemas, which, you know, not many had actually done that, had a full grade Super 8 feature before. We needed to blow the film up to 16mm film, stretch print it, all of these highly technical things that we learnt about. And there were very few people who could do it. And one of the few people that the British Film Institute found that could do it, they said, we found this company, we can go along, they're going to help us do it. And this fellow John Hall is going to mastermind the whole thing. So we went along to meet him. And he was a one-eyed man who'd, I think, had been a fighter pilot or something, hadn't he? And he was, and I thought, I didn't fill me with confidence that the man who was going to be doing this highly technical stretch printing process no one had ever done before had only one eye. But in fact, he was absolutely brilliant. When you watch the film now, is that because you have stretch printed it and you have blown it up, there's a strange sort of dreamlike quality to all the movement of people. You can look at people in that opening sequence when they're walking around, and there's a very strange quality to it, which you don't get in any other kind of films. The thing people forget about Super 8 film is that the colours, even today, when you're looking at something that old, the colours in the film are absolutely amazing. And if we'd done it on video then, it would have been so washed out, not a tenth of the sort of quality.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing format to use, and it was just perfect, because the whole way of doing the film, the whole reason we did it and the way we did it, was exactly in line with the whole do-it-yourself punk ethic, which was if you had 3 chords, you could form a band. In our case, if you had 2 malfunctioning cameras, you could make a film.
That's right. The whole project just went from one stage to another. Every stage we were surprised. We got the money, it went on 16mm. For us, the great thing was it was going to be released at some of the independent cinemas that could show 16mm prints at the time. And then bit by bit, the next thing we knew, it had gone into those awards, and it was a massive surprise.
I didn't even know who John Grierson was when we won the prize, and I actually shamefacedly had to go and find out that he was, you know, a great documentary pioneer. And they sent us a bust of his head, which I found out later had been sculpted by Epstein. And I was really chuffed. I was thinking that we could keep it.
Yeah.
See, I thought, one day, when times are hard, I can sell this Epstein sculpture for millions.
It depends on who had it at the time, because we like
Well,
swapping
I would have had it at the time.
We were swapping
No,
it
I
back
would
and
have
forth
had it
after every 6 months or a
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
So.
I would have made sure that when I needed it, I had it.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, I had to give it back. And then they gave us a picture of it,
Yes.
which, I thought was a bit of a swizz, really.
And
But we actually got, from Australia, we got a silver boomerang as an award, which I always thought we should have sent it back.
It was good. It was won the second best short film in Australia. It had also won in Chicago and elsewhere, but there was
Toronto, various places. Yeah.
Well, you were going to punk gigs, you were going to see the oi groups. You were
Skinheads,
doing them all. But
yeah.
What was your view at the time? What were you both into?
Well, I think
He was into ABBA.
Dom keeps saying I had an ABBA T-shirt on, which
did
I
have an
do
ABBA
not
T-shirt.
remember. How could I wear an ABBA T-shirt going
I was ashamed.
and talking to skinheads with you and when
Exactly. Exactly.
How was
Going along to punk gigs and talking to skinheads in Petticoat Lane and Hasan having his ABBA T-shirt on was just more than I could bear. I was so ashamed. I would never live it down.
So Dom, one of the tricks, because I remember the time we were going to go and interview some of the skinheads. You had a skinhead haircut, did you not? Near at the time.
I didn't just have a skinhead haircut. I had the whole gear.
You had you dressed up completely.
I had the DMs. I had everything. And so going along and talking to these guys and dressing like them and looking like them made it easier, again, with our tiny, tiny cameras, to get access and to get some of those people, even though some of their views were objectionable, getting them to be unguarded on camera and getting to them to say things that they wouldn't be saying perhaps to the BBC. I think it's sort of both touching and slightly worrying that so many of the bands that we filmed then are sort of still going and they're reformed and they're still playing America and they're still doing all this stuff. Because, of course, there's a whole new generation now who are into bands like Blink-182 and Green Day and all the rest of it, who have, if you like, taken an American twist on 70s punk music. And they've sort of added their own vibe and they've done their sort of West and East Coast flavours of original punk styles. And they've reinvented them. And so, in a sense, this generation's punk bands and the sort of guitar-based music draws an awful lot on the bands of the 70s and 80s.
Paul Allen had his work cut out and it took weeks and weeks and weeks.
Well, that's why the title was very important, because it was very important to let audiences know what they were in for. Because if we'd told them it was a regular documentary and they'd gone along expecting a glossy music documentary, they'd have been really disappointed. I don't think they would have been disappointed in the end, but it would have been a surprise for them to see the kind of technical quality we were working with. So coming up with the title, I was trying to think of a title that would give us a kind of headline up, a kind of heads up to the audience that what they were seeing was a very sort of do-it-yourself homemade affair. And Rough Cut and Ready Dub seemed to suit it. It's, it comes from, roll up fags. It's what's written on the side of your Rizla papers. On the tobacco, it says Rough Cut and Ready Rubbed. So I thought it was perfect for us because it's the perfect title to tell you exactly what you're going to get. And there's no sort of illusions set up in your mind when you know that that's what the film is called.
What's been involved in re-releasing a 20-year-old film that's been sat on an archive shelf for all this time? I mean, what have you gone? What have you done to re-release it?
We've managed to actually regrade it. So it's been regraded, and then it's going through new technology for the scratch removal. Hence, then we will have a much sharper picture. The overall feel and style of the film will still be there. We won't be like getting rid of the grain, where some people said, "Why don't you get rid of the grain," etc. But no, we don't. It's got to be kept as it is, just really freshened up.
Well, one of the mistakes that we repeated 25 years later was working with each other, because that was one of the main mistakes. Because all the same arguments came out. It's like I was still shouting at him for pointing the camera in the wrong direction. She was still moaning about, basically when the interviews come back and the sound's all crap and the heads are cut off. Still having the same old arguments I had 25 years. This is why we only work together every 25 years.
We know it takes us 25 years to calm down and get ourselves back together again to actually take the pressure from each other.
Never again.
And So we'll see when we're about 75. See what happens then.
Never again. Never again.
The Zimmer frames and ready cut.
Yes, it could be that. It could be that. Mind you, will we look the same when we're that age? I guess we've not changed much since our teens, anyway.
No, honestly, no.
Have you got any message to anyone who's about to watch the film or has just watched it?
Did you enjoy it? If so, good. And if not, why not?
If you're about to watch it, make your way slowly to the till. Hand over your money. Don't even think about shoplifting. And go home and enjoy the film.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you.
Enough already. Enough already.
That's it. That's a wrap.
Good.
Okay.
So we should be able to use about 5 seconds of that. Well done.
There you go. While we're
broken?
sitting there as well.
Is it broken? Is it broken? Is it all right?
Yeah, no, it's okay. I think it's okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's okay. I've got it.
We really should get a tripod.
Yeah, I know. That
We
bookshelf
really
just
Should get
doesn't
someone
work.
who knows how to film.
Oh, why start now?